right, I will call to order the Architectural Board Review agenda for May 17th, 2021. We'll start with our roll call, please.
I think I will be stepping in for Mary momentarily until she gets on the broadcast. So I will now start the roll call. Chair Moore.
Here.
Vice Chair Six.
Here.
Board Member Anderson.
Here.
Board Member Black.
Here.
Board Member Olson.
Here.
And Board Member Whelan.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. And we'll move to general business and start with public comment. Any member of the public may address the board for up to 2 minutes on any subject within our jurisdiction that is not scheduled on this agenda for public discussion. You can follow the instructions on screen, and that will alert staff that you would like to make a public comment.
Thank you, Board Member, Chair Moore. At this time, I don't see that any member of the public has raised their hand to speak on any general items.
Okay.
And also, our normal commission secretary is having a little bit of problems logging in. I don't believe we received any general written public comment on this agenda. We did receive some written correspondence, but it wasn't for general.
Okay, then we will close public comment and move on to next item, which I believe is approval of the minutes from May 3rd. Does anyone have any?
So moved, and I have a discussion item.
Okay.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Olson. Any discussion?
Yes, Chair Moore, item 4, motion number 3.
Mm-hmm.
So provide a weep screen detail that eliminate wraps around the plaster and add a screen detail that adds a metal plaster stop below the weep screen that allows.
Okay.
That's it.
Make sense? Okay.
Agree.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Olson. Is there any other discussion? No? Okay. Then let's take our roll call vote, please.
I will now start the roll call vote. Board Member 6.
Yes.
Board Member Anderson.
Yes.
Board Member Black.
Yes.
Board Member Olson.
Yes.
Board Member Whelan.
Yes.
And Chair Moore.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
All right. And then approval of the minutes for the consent calendar today. We could have those read.
Thank you, Chair Moore. Item A was 175 South LaCumbra Lane. Pardon me, let me step back. The consent calendar today was reviewed by Vice Chair Six, Board Member Black, and Board Members Anderson. Item A, 175 South LaCumbra Lane received a continuance. And apologize, since we just got out of consent, we don't have all the final details, so we can read these at the next meeting if we need to. 34, item B, 3441 State Street received a review after final, received approval as submitted. Item C, 424 West Rancheria Street received, was a continued item, so it'll be coming back to consent with comments. Item D, 3052 De La Vina Street received project design and final approval with comments. And those comments will be, again, we'll have those minutes available to you. Item DE, 1187 Coast Village Road received project design approval with the project compatibility criteria being met and comments. Item 1230 San Andres Street received final approval with several conditions. Again, we'll have those minutes up for your review.
Okay, just to be clear, so is it a good idea to wait until the minutes are complete so we can review those before we take a vote?
That's actually a good question. Sometimes this happens in other boards and they just go through. I think we had several comments, and I do think the consent reviewers would like to look at those comments beforehand. If I'm not overstepping, I kind of think that those comments were rather important for several of these projects. So we can wait on these minutes and have them up next time so that they can be reviewed more thoroughly by the board.
Okay, I think that's a good idea. We push the approval of these minutes. Okay, do we need a motion to that effect, or we're just gonna continue this discussion?
Thank you, Chair Moore. I believe we need a motion to continue these since it was on an item that was agendized.
Okay, I'll make a motion to continue approval of the consent calendar minutes till the next available agenda.
Chairman Moore, I don't think you can do that. You need to abstain.
Okay, well, it's just the approval of the minutes. I'm not making any comments or approving the minutes themselves, but if you'd be more comfortable doing that, go ahead.
So I will make that motion.
Okay.
Second.
Seconded by Olson. So let's take our roll call vote, please.
All right, thank you. This is Mary. I'm back to take the roll call vote. So I'll start with Chair Moore,
Yes.
Vice Chair Sick,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Black,
Yes.
Board Member Olson,
Yes.
and Board Member Whalen.
Yes.
All right, the motion carries. Thank you.
Okay. Now we're on to any announcements or requests by applicants for continuances, etc. Anything from staff?
Thank you, Chair Moore. There are no staff announcements specifically, but I just wanted to say that we're in a new rotation for consent calendar, and we have Vice Chair Six and Board Member Anderson reviewing consent for the months of May and June, and with Board Member Black stepping in to help assist with the landscaping items.
Okay, great. Thank you all for doing that.
What a team.
Yes. All right, and then item E is any subcommittee reports? Anybody's had any activity?
No, Highway 101 is dormant right now.
Anyone else? Nothing new to report? Okay.
I did,
Let's- Oh, go ahead, Mr. Olson.
thank you. I did submit a email to Christina with my comments and questions clearly made on Funk Zone murals. That just went to her this morning, so I'm sure that she's not prepared to discuss it yet.
Thank you. Then we will move on from general business to our first item, if we can. How are we doing on time? We can start, looks like. Okay, so this is item number 1, and it is 515 West Los Olivos Street. It is here for concept review. This is a revised project. This is a proposal for 6 residential units comprising of a 2-story duplex and a 3-story fourplex using the average unit size density program. Unit mix includes 1 studio, 1 bedroom unit, 2 2-bedroom units, and 2 4-bedroom units. Units range in size from 295 square feet to 1,382 square feet. An average unit size of 1,039 square feet. Proposed density on this 12,585 square foot lot is 17 units per acre on a site located in medium-high density, which allows between 15 to 27 dwelling units per acre. Project proposes 20.77 dwelling units per acre. The proposal includes 8 vehicles parking spaces and 6 bicycle parking spaces. The existing residence is proposed to be demolished. No final appealable decision will be made at this hearing. This project requires compliance with project compatibility analysis, the urban design guidelines, infill design guidelines, and the outdoor lighting design guidelines. It was last here, November 16th of last year. Okay, and our motion, thank you for putting that up. We can all read that and refamiliarize ourselves with that. And, we can invite the applicant to join us and introduce themselves. Or do we have our applicants?
Chairman Moore
Yes.
is the owner, Steve Johnson. I believe my architect, Matt Sabula, is in attendance.
Okay.
We have a 3D video, and since a picture is worth 1,000 words, we have 15,000 pictures. I propose that we immediately display the 3D video. I'll note that our landscape architect, Charles McClure, is also in attendance, but after seeing the video, I think Matt Sabula will be happy to entertain any questions from the board.
Okay, and as we get underway here, please note the little timer that's up there in the upper right-hand corner, the 15 minutes. That indicates your time for your presentation, so.
The video will take just under
Keep that
5
in mind. Great. Okay, if staff is ready, they can take it away.
it might make sense to scroll through the PDF showing the plans at this point. Site plan, survey.
Okay.
I think this can go quickly if unless the board wants more detail on any particular item.
Just, yeah, walk us through the changes that you've made in the interim here, so we can see what's new.
Okay, so the existing house is to be demolished and replaced by a two-story duplex in front. The storage unit in the back of the property is now removed. The oak tree is preserved. The ground floor of unit 1 of the fourplex has been converted to the bicycle storage area. And unit 1 now is a smaller unit, but just on the living space on unit floors 2 and 3. There's a attractive usable court between the two structures. The 15% requirement for open yard is actually met with 24%. There's 24% open yard space. I'll mention briefly, the board expressed a concern about the view from the freeway to the, I guess I'd call it the southwest elevation. It's appeared to be too open. We also have a video of what a vehicle would see driving north on the freeway. Is it possible to show that at this time?
Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. I didn't realize I was not muted, sorry.
I'm just glancing at my response to the comments from the ABR. The window treatments have been altered as the ABR requested. I think the video pretty much shows the changes.
Why don't you walk us through the elevations?
Sure. I might ask Matt Sabula if he'd like to do that. May need to back up and go through them. Here we go, elevations.
Yeah, so this right here, this is the new proposed front building. We tore down the existing residence that was there. We're proposing, casement windows. The trim on the windows is 2x6 trim with some 2x3 cap pieces and 2x3 sills. The posts for the entry is 6x6 posts with some little corbels details. I have corbels on the gables. Proposing exposed rafter tails for the roof eave overhang. Wood entry door, asphalt shingle roof. The siding is the composite type horizontal siding with like a 2x10 trim piece at the floor line. I think that's about it as far as the basic details.
And do we want to go to the fourplex? So we've seen it basically not changed other than southwest elevation and windows, I think. Oh, well, the removal of the large storage area in rear, that's a significant change.
Yeah, we took out the back storage area. We added a nice little patio around the existing oak tree. We made the balconies over the parking larger and created some solid wall areas just to kind of make it look more like it wasn't, like the building wasn't hanging over the parking like the previous design. Added some gable ends over the decks on the second story. Before we had like little shed roofs over those deck areas. And then the windows are all casement windows with the same detail as the front building. We do have some stucco on this building on the first level, and then it's horizontal siding on the second and third levels. And also the same detail with the rafter tails are exposed. Gable end corbels. So similar details. I think that's about it for a lot of the changes that we did on that back building.
We might as well conclude at this point, maybe get ahead on the schedule.
Why don't we just remind us of the site plan and the relationship to the neighbors, especially with these second floor decks?
What's the particular concern? About that, there are decks along the northern property line that comply with setback requirements. The neighbors, there's about a 25-foot wide driveway from the, one of the photos would show what the neighboring property, that's Tejado Grove. It's the Westmont 13 condominiums. We don't feel like those balconies intrude. There's the first picture, adjacent property, in the upper left. We don't feel that those balconies intrude particularly onto that property.
Okay, and then the property on the opposite side?
It benefits from a more generous setback. Building is set back farther from that, and the balconies facing that side probably are not going to get as much use because there's more acoustic issues on that side of the structure. The existing, I believe it's actually a duplex. That neighboring property also benefits from a nice oak tree that we just paid to have trimmed. It's in good health at this point, but provides quite a bit of screening from the balconies, the fourplex balconies. It's shown there in the site plan. The duplex is quite a bit further towards the street than the fourplex. And the oak does provide quite a bit of screening between the duplex and the fourplex. Excuse me, when I say duplex, I mean the neighbor's duplex.
Okay, can you show us the photos of that again, of that area? That's
driveway. You can see there's an oak right on the boundary line of the driveway. It's a one-story duplex just off to the right of that photo.
Do you have a photo of that?
It might show up on
Vantage
previous
point.
photos. There it is. Adjacent dwelling to southwest of property.
Okay,
And the overgrown oak has now been trimmed.
Mr. McClure, do you have any landscape?
If you go to the landscape plan, I'll point out a couple of things. Yeah, notice along the north property line, the reason we don't have any trees is because the neighbor to the north has a bunch of existing Tristania trees, and you can show, I show there the edge of their pavers, their paver driveway. It's very close in, and they have a nice existing tree presence. That's an evergreen tree. And then they asked us not to grow anything on their fence because they own the fence, and they were they're real straightforward with us, saying you don't have the opportunity to put anything on the fence. So yeah, this condition along there. And then that we do have some nice new trees on the south side. And then the presence of the two big oaks, and then our other trees. But referencing or describing the landscape along those two property lines you just were talking about was what I thought I should hit on. And other than that, it's about the same as it was. It's really tough landscape, and we have our sitting areas in the two places, and I'm happy with it.
Okay. If there's nothing else you'd like to add, we can move on to public comment, if that's all right. Is there anybody in the public that would like to make a comment about this project? You can follow the instructions on the screen.
Thank you, Chair Moore. At this time, I don't see any member of the public has logged on to the webinar and raised their hand indicating that they'd like to speak. Mary, did we receive any written public correspondence on this item?
Thank you, Christina and board members. We did receive a letter from Steve Johnson, the applicant owner, but no additional written correspondence was received. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And with that, we will close public comment and go on to questions from the board. Who'd like to start? Questions?
Mr. Chair.
Vice Chair Six, go ahead.
Yes, I have to ask, a very recent project we just reviewed, was this close to the freeway and had significant architectural impacts for acoustic reasons, unopenable windows, et cetera, Has the applicant verified and made what the acoustic requirements are about the freeway, because it could reflect in the architecture?
Would you like me to respond? I'm confident that the acoustics on the side of the building facing the mountains will meet the 60 dB exterior standard. Those private decks will be well screened by the fourplex itself.
Okay, so I guess it's more of a concern than a elicit a response. On a very specific question that will lead into my comments, if on the landscape plan, if we could go there, Mr. Bolton. There is, when one approaches the garage entry, there's enough room for your trash and so forth along that downsheet wall. And I noticed that the architecture doesn't take advantage and return that wall on the right-hand side of the opening to make more centered and more hefty surround to that opening. Which one is right, the architecture for clearance or the landscape?
I suspect this is an issue that will be resolved if we can go forward. I had in mind another location for a couple of the trash cans, which would be, I think we're slightly out of sync between the site plan and the landscape plan. Probably two of the enclosures will be closer to the duplex, so they'll be accessible for the resident in the accessible unit.
So if we go to the architectural site plan, Mr. Bolden?
And I apologize, they do not show on this version of the site plan. We've got an updated version. And even the version from the previous plan would show where they go, but no, I just went by, we don't have them correctly shown on this site plan. But I can state that in my updated site plan, 2 are under the stairwell of the front duplex, and the remainder are be actually where we show some landscaping right now. There'll be a screening wall, and they'll be just behind that. Just
Okay,
prior to
so
entrance.
yeah, we'll look forward to that, those positions. But the bottom line for me is that return on the end of the downsheet wall just to the left, just to the right of as you're entering underneath the garage, that return can't be widened right there. Yes, that return wall can't be thickened toward in order to reduce opening because of car clearances. Yes or no?
I am not sure I understand the question. I might defer that to either Matt or Charles. Do you have a sense what is requested here?
Yeah, my plan shows architecture with a little piece of architecture on as somebody enters the big building from the driveway. The driveway was hitting that southern piece of architecture more or less centered, so that there was a wing wall hiding the trash enclosure, and that's not shown on this drawing. And we're questioning which one's accurate or which one's being proposed.
Yeah, usually there is precise turning radiuses that dictate how the ADA van or the cars can go through, and I'm wondering if you can shift that entry up sheet a little bit and still get your turning radiuses to maneuver into the appropriate spaces. Does your architect know the layout here or no?
Yeah, I think we could definitely shift that driveway over and create a little more of a screen for the trash. That's what you're getting at, right?
Mhm.
Just
That's
to-
correct. Or better architecture.
Better architecture,
Okay.
that's what we want.
Yep. I think those are my questions.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Yes, I would like to
Go ahead.
see, again, on the screen, our comments from the previous meeting. And if you would leave them up just long enough for me to get through them, I'd appreciate it. I'd like to make sure that we've covered these items. Thank you for putting them up.
I might note that the letter that I submitted as a member of the public address each of these items. And I'd be happy to read my responses if you'd like, but perhaps you have a specific one that is of interest.
At the moment, I don't. All right, thank you. I have,
Okay,
I'm satisfied with that.
okay. Anybody else?
Chair Moore,
Questions?
I have one more question. Oh,
Go ahead.
well, here it's resolved. So there's an inconsistency between the architectural ground floor plan with the red lines and this plan is where this plan is very well organized with the openings from the head of the parking stall to the entry courtyard, but the red architecture had misalignments where an opening would be right in front of a car and very awkward to get in between. So is this, I guess the question would be, is this the direction here, or because of structural, those openings, will those openings be more like the red walled plans?
Could we scroll up to the red wall plan? The site plan is showing us the parking that works. The turning radius. Which is the red wall plan that you, this one?
Yeah.
First one?
Yeah. This one, you can see that like the mid opening especially is awkwardly right in between, or right at the head of a car, which one would have to squeeze by the front of the car and et cetera, et cetera. These alignments aren't as well or aligned as the other plan.
We have created a parking site plan, parking study with all the turning radiuses verified that we're confident that parking requirements will be satisfied.
I'm just talking about the specifics of getting from your car to your front door. These openings don't seem to be aligned very well, especially the mid bay, with the ability to walk between you and your neighbor's car to the opening. It seems like a simple alignment, which the other one has.
Yeah, it's something that we can move. I see what you mean, and we can slide that down so it's between the two parking spaces. That's what you're,
Exactly.
yeah, that's definitely not a problem.
That's all I'm going for. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Anderson, you had some questions?
Yeah, did you guys submit a color board with all your materials on it?
We were under the impression that that wasn't required for concept review. If that was a misconception, I apologize.
It was just a question. And then you said for window treatments, you added trim, but what, are you still using fiberglass windows or vinyl windows, or what are you guys?
Casement windows, is that correct? Casement? Casement windows would be 2x6 trim on the sides, 2x6 top piece with a 2x3 cap on top of that, and then a 2x3 sill with a 2x4 underneath the sill.
Okay.
I think the question was, what was the window material itself? What is the window made out of?
I think it's wood casement.
Okay.
Flat on the outside.
We'll be more specific if we can come back with something like this design.
Okay. I think those are my only questions.
Okay. Anyone else? Mr. Whalen? Mr. Black, any questions?
No questions.
Okay. So my questions are just following up where Vice Chair Six was kind of poking around at. So if you look at the front elevation on this sheet, this is the front elevation of the back building, is that correct?
Mhm.
Yes.
So it's kind of hard to see. It's sort of tucked in there, but so on the lower right-hand corner, as you would be driving into the garage area, how thick is that wall that you'd be passing by? On edge as you're approaching it, is it?
On the right side as you're driving in?
Yep.
Right there. Yeah, it's 12 inches thick.
12 inches, okay. And then there's kind of a large covered area that's at the left-hand side of the driveway entrance that doesn't appear to have anything in it at this point. Is there a reason for that?
Just
Go
trying
to
to
the
make
site
it not
plan.
too crowded as you drive in.
Okay.
There is a window there that looks into that parking area from that space on the ground level.
We don't believe that part of the structure has changed from the earlier design. It's, the ground floor has been repurposed to the bicycle parking.
Okay. Well, the reason I bring it up is that, is there opportunity to essentially shift the entry of the garage so that we get a little bit more thickness in the wall on the right-hand side, so it doesn't appear so spindly and thin.
I
And
understand
then,
concern.
okay, that's the question. But if there's no wiggle room to slide the entry or change the dimension of the entry, then that's what we're asking.
The setback requirement on that freeway side is 6 feet, and we're set back almost at least 9 feet, probably 10 feet. We're set back 10 feet. No problem of extending that column, I guess I'd call it, or wall, and make it wider out towards the freeway, if that would be helpful.
Well, the question was, could it expand in the other direction so it becomes wider on the driveway side?
That,
I think it could be. I mean, we could expand it.
And that would certainly alleviate some of the concerns about tucking the trash bins behind that. So you might get a little bit of bang for your buck there. Tell me, let's go back to the elevations. Do you have your heights called out for floor to floor and floor to ceiling? Anywhere? Is there a section?
Doesn't look like I did floor to floor. Oh wait, here we go. That's just the solar thing.
Okay. So 10 foot and 9'8" on that one, and then 8, 8, and 8. Okay.
Yeah.
And there's is that an existing grade change at the left-hand side?
yes, that's an existing grade change.
Okay. Any other follow-up questions from board members?
No.
Okay. Then we will move to comments. Okay, good. Have the applicants turn their microphones and screens off, cameras off, and get everybody on here. Okay, who would like to start? Vice Chair Six, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I think this is a vast improvement over the last submittal, and I appreciate all that the applicant and architect have responded to our comments seriously. And I like the architecture. I think it's successful. I think that, our issue of the awkwardness of reaching out to the downsheet property line and having the bulk of the second and third floor hang over it. I think that's very successfully resolved by the massive stucco first floor banding and the much better organization of and alignment of the balconies to make up that cantilever difference. I like the alignments of the windows and so forth. I think it's a much better design and acceptable, and site plan especially. As I alluded to in my questions, I think that the right-hand side of the garage entry, that column, if there is turning radius or car maneuverability, wiggle room, that wall should be thickened as much as possible. And if trash still remains there, that's a very positive place to further contain the trash. And again, if the maneuverability tolerances are the same on the other side of that front balcony, that the wall on the other side could be extended out to include further indent the trash into the architecture. I'm not so excited about the artificial turf and the ribbon driveway either. It should be a real ground material, or I'd rather see a brick paving of some sort. I think that synthetic turf is only tolerable when there is a public baseball field that gets heavily used. Just other comments. I think that I think it's barely recognizable here, but there is a serrated stair-stepped wall between the two downsheet balconies. I think it would be better if that was sloped with the slope of the roof and a white trim cap put on it. I think from an aerial view it looks strange, but I think everybody looking at it would look just like another rake wall. I'm just wondering, for the livability of or the desirability of balconies, if three solid stucco walls on three sides would be have some kind of railing in the front in order to break up your enclosed box, even though it's only 42 inches high. And I think that privacy issues to the neighbor that are very well handled. There's the unit there is directly across from that garden area, and the front unit doesn't have many windows looking down upon it. But in interest of this project, I'm wondering if you should just you know, can we go to, let's see, the north, a north elevation? Yeah, these three balconies that face the humongous project to the north. I wonder if it would be more, you know, those are going to be very viewed upon by all those windows, that project to the north. Wondered if it'd be considered a trellis or something, and they over it, so there, you know, at least there'd be a sense of privacy, if not a full on privacy. Just a suggestion. I wouldn't criticize the architecture for it, but it might be an idea to explore to generate more privacy for those balconies. And lastly, you better check on the local building department ruling on winding stairs. I noticed that some of your interior stairs have winders, and I know that I've had trouble with those, and I only mention it because it can be a very significant impact on your heights and your internal organization and your architecture. Those are my comments.
Some comments?
Okay, thank you. Mr. Olson, go ahead.
Yes, could we go back to the sheet we were at just previous to this one? When we were, yes. So the elevation there on the middle and to the right, I think this is, well, first of all, let me say that I do think that this is much, much improved from what was brought to us the last time. And I do want to recognize that. And I think it's quite close to being it's quite good actually this way. But the issue here that I'm uncomfortable with is this thickness of the wall on the right side of this overhang. And I heard the reason why it might not be able to be thickened as to moving it towards the interior part of the building, but it seems to me that it could be thickened to the other way, and an illusion made at the very least that is a thicker wall, so that perhaps the balcony itself gets thickened at that point back 2 or 3 feet. But that would allow that wall to have some thickness that becomes much more convincing that things are going to be all right there. So that's all the comments I have.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Ms. Anderson?
Oh, yeah, I agree with how it's laid out. I think it maximizes the site's potential. I think in the next round, it will be helpful for all of our discussion for just some defining of that base, the plaster base, just providing some details and maybe defining the garage openings and the railing, if it's a railing or a parapet. So yeah, I think the next round, otherwise I think the site massing is fine.
I have one more comment. I think that the issue of that overhang color might help us feel more comfortable with the base there. That if it was not a lighter color, or even the same color as the above, if it's a darker color, it might give the illusion, a better illusion of holding things up.
Okay. Mr. Whalen, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yes, thank you, Chair Moore. I too feel that the design shows much progress towards a final approval, and I appreciate all the good efforts that the proponent and the architect have made. I find that the removing the existing building and replacing it with a new one more closely refines the character of the adjacent neighborhood buildings. And so the removal of this, the removal and replacement is something I strongly support. The character and detail of that two-story portion is much appreciated. And to the point that Member Anderson just made, the plain, smooth plaster plinth is an improvement, but it still does not integrate as well with the upper floors in a cohesive bungalow style. So the development of openings and trim work and brackets, I think is called for, especially say at the columns that support the balconies on the north sides could use some more detailing and brackets such as are used on the two-story house. And then to the much mentioned garage opening, we are there on sheet 7. I would encourage the design to resemble the opening as it appears at the rear, which has nice wide, shall we say, return walls on it. I think that's what the board is looking for, something that reads more clearly as an opening despite its structural strength as proposed. We're looking for more of a visual strength. And again, to define some of these openings with better details of the bungalow style. Let's see, I'm a bit concerned about the oak canopy, and I'll defer to Member Black. It's indicated as having a 20-foot radius, so it really is going to be arching over that balcony, and seems like quite the high wire act to actually preserve the tree and get the building built at the same time. Again, I'll defer to Member Black on that. And the parking for the two-story unit, I would like to see a better pedestrian connection between the parking area and the two-story unit. Right now, the assumption is that you walk in the driveway along that patio section. If you can go to the landscape plan, you can see what I'm talking about. Sorry, I don't know the sheet number. Yeah, so you can see that in that area between the two buildings, I would make a full pedestrian connection along the curb of the driveway. And then lastly, I would encourage the designers to consider making the entry to the bike storage area through the parking area, which is where you're going to ride your bike in and out. It's covered. I appreciate the design that they've gone through with the windows and the little shed porch and the front door. That could all be fake. It adds to the ambiance overall. But I think a nice wide 4 or even 4.5 foot door is going to serve you much better in the long term if it's located accessing through the ground floor parking area. Thanks very much for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you. Mr. Black.
You're muted. You're muted.
I apologize. I would like to compliment the applicant for the, the amount of landscape area. So many of these projects on these narrow lots, the landscape is sort of the last thought, but we have a fair amount of planting, which I think will really complement the buildings. As far as the oak tree is concerned, looking at it, I think it's probably okay, but I would suggest that the applicant have a arborist report made that would review the what's being proposed building wise, and just to ensure that in fact everything is being done to protect that oak tree. That's all. Thanks.
Okay. As a point of clarification, maybe Mr. McClure can answer this. So in this plan, we're seeing the blue large tree at the rear of the property X'd out. And I assume that means to be removed. But what tree are we seeing in the 3D model at the rear? If we could allow Mr. McClure back in.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so that's a drafting error. That tree is not to be removed. That's an asset. I don't know how that it's not to be removed. That's a mistake.
Good.
Okay.
I figured as much.
Okay. And so my own comments are, yes, this is vastly improved from the first time we saw this. It's definitely heading in the right direction with some continued refinement. I think it'll be a good addition to this neighborhood. As Mr. Whalen summarized, please try and make your openings in the plaster base look like punched openings instead of just large structural cantilevers with spindly columns. We want this to look like a real, these are bearing walls, that have some thickness and, resonate a little bit more with a Santa Barbara style in that way. I would encourage you to develop the common open space into a little bit more of a, headphones stopped. Sorry about that. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would encourage you to continue to develop that common open space to provide elements that people would truly use and make it an amenity for the space rather than just a simple park setting. So consider other uses that people might want there, like barbecue or anything like that. So those are my comments. And please, when you return, please come back with color board and materials called out, exterior lighting, all of those elements so we can continue to move your project forward. Okay, is there somebody want to make a motion? Vice Chair Six, go ahead.
The lack of any other volunteers. I will make what is this here for?
It's just conceptual review, so we can't give it any sort of PDA at this point, but.
Okay, so I would move for an indefinite continuance with the comments that the conceptual design is vastly improved from previous proposal, that the architecture has been refined and improved to in a very acceptable state, that the organization and massing of the plinth, especially the cutouts versus balconies along the south side, have been organized to be acceptable, with the minor refinement to find ways to thicken the returns of those walls parallel with the property line in order to provide more mass in those areas. a successful example of that is the rear garage opening. That the stucco plinth should have, should continue the good craftsman detailing of the upper 3 stories with minor finesses of corbels, refinements of the trim, perhaps punches of portion for railings at the balconies enclosures. And perhaps additional trim around openings, etc. The applicant should further study the open yard between the front unit and the back unit to provide more open yard amenities such as barbecues, benches, tables, as well as a more direct linkage between the parking under the back unit and the entry to the front unit. One board member feels that refinement could be made, minor refinement could be made to the division wall between the meeting balconies, the adjacent balconies on the south side, with a globe and a white trim top rather than to match the other architecture. One board member feels that real landscape or brick patterns would be better than artificial turf in the driveway ribbon. And looking forward to successful distribution of the partially resolved trash locations. And if possible, trash remaining in where the landscape plan shows that return walls on each side of that location be introduced, if possible. Looking forward to a color board with the next application. And I'll say, and one can disagree, that the vinyl windows are acceptable given that they are recessed from the surface of the exterior surface of the walls, and adequate trim, decorative trim is provided on the surrounds. I think that's it. I don't know, there might be some other things I've missed or things that want to be refined from other board members.
Okay, thank you for that. I will second that motion. Is there any other discussion? No? Okay, then let's take our vote.
Further discussion, can the
Okay.
whole board be behind replacement of the synthetic turf in the driveway ribbon?
I'm fine with that.
Yes.
Okay, so the motion should be changed from one board member to the board? And also, can the whole board support changing the serrated wall between the adjoining balconies? Or shall we keep that as one board member?
Now explain that one to me again. What's the issue?
Well, in the southern elevation, there's two exterior balconies. They're side by side, and there's a serrated wall there.
Oh, the stepped wall. I see what you mean.
Step wall. And it might look better to have the wall slope with the same slope of the roof and a trim atop it, a white trim atop it to make it more similar to the architecture. Some minor, but leave it as one board member.
Yeah, I think it's an unfortunate bit of design there that they got put right next to each other in that way, but we could suggest that they study that.
Yes,
So
I think they've got the idea.
yeah. Okay, any other discussion?
I'd like to have the motion read.
Okay, let's read the motion back, please.
All right, thank you. So I have that the motion is to continue indefinitely with the following comments. Number one, the conceptual design has vastly improved from the previous proposal. The architecture has been refined and improved. The organization and massing of the plinths are acceptable, with the minor refinement that the applicant shall find ways to thicken the return of those walls parallel with the property line in order to provide more mass in those areas. A successful example of this is the rear garage opening. Number two, the stucco plinth should continue the good craftsman detailing of the upper 3 stories with minor finessing of the corbels, refinement of the trims, perhaps providing punches in the railings of the balconies. Number 3, further study the open yard from the front unit and the back unit to provide more open yard amenities and a more direct linkage between parking under the back unit and the entry to the front unit. Number 4, study minor refinement to the division wall to the adjacent balconies on the south side. The wall shall slope the same slope as the roof. Number 5, the board feels.
Mary, let me interrupt you on that adjoining. That was a one board member on that adjoining wall between that wall dividing adjoining balconies.
Okay, so I can say one board member feels.
Yeah.
Okay, so then number 5, the board, all board members or the board feels that real landscaping or brick patterns would be better than the synthetic turf provided in the driveway ribbon. Number 6, the board looks forward to the successful distribution of the partially resolved trash location. Number 7, the board looks forward to a color board. And number 8, the vinyl windows are acceptable given their recess from the exterior surface of the walls and that decorative trim is provided on the surrounds.
Way to go, Mary.
Really?
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Okay, Mr. Whalen? Yes.
Yes, on number 2, Mary, I believe it's about the rendering the plaster plinth on the 3-story. I believe it should read to accentuate the detailing found on the 2-story unit.
Okay.
Okay, I can add that.
Does that make sense? Rather than, I believe your phrase was found on the 3-story unit.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right, if we're satisfied, we can, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Moore. I was just wondering if the board would want to put the Member Black's arborist report requirement in there for any tree protection measures for the oak tree.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure Vice Chair Six would be willing to add that to his motion.
Now, is that for just the one tree on the south, not the rear one?
No, the rear one as well.
Okay, might as well.
Yep.
Both trees, Mary.
Although,
McGuire, Ms. McGuire.
And this would be, Ms. McGuire, this would be an indefinite continuance? Or are they able to move forward faster?
Thank you, Chair Moore. They are not able to move forward any quicker. They did go through the completeness review through the land development team, and they're incomplete, so they're just working out a couple of little things. And as soon as I'm sure the applicant, as soon as they get those things together, will be able to put forth an application handling the land development team items as well as the items from your board today.
Okay, so it'd be an indefinite continuance back to the full board. All right, so I think we've worked out all our discussion items, so we can take our vote.
All right, thank you. I'll go ahead and start with Chair Moore,
Yes.
Vice Chair Six,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Black,
Yes.
Board Member Olson,
yes,
and Board Member Whalen.
Yes.
All right, thank you. The motion passes.
Okay, thank you. And before we jump into item number 2, let's just take a 2-minute break, please. ABR agenda for the 17th and continue on with item number 2. And make sure how we're doing on time. 4:30. Good. So this is 1812 San Pasqual Street and is here for project design approval. This is a proposal for 4 new residential units on a site developed with a duplex using the AUD program. The project entails retaining the existing 1-bedroom duplex and constructing a new 2-story structure containing 4 2-bedroom units. Units sizes range from 931 to 1,120 square feet with an average unit size of 981 square feet. The proposed density on this 11,580 square foot lot is 23 dwelling units per acre on a site with a general plan land use designation of medium-high density residential, which allows for 15 to 27 dwelling units per acre. 4 new parking spaces are proposed as part of this project. Project design approval is requested, and the project requires compliance with the project compatibility analysis, the urban design guidelines, the infill design guidelines, and the outdoor lighting design guidelines. We last saw this project August 24th of last year. And looks like Mr. McGuire, you have something to add?
Thank you, Chair Moore. I just wanted to mention that this project is here for an appealable action today, since it has met all the requirements from the land development team. So just take that into your consideration while you're reviewing the project, please.
Okay. And we had a few comments here. Seems mostly positive. Just some caveats there.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I believe the last time this was before us, I recused myself at the time that it was brought before us. I believe there were issues, I had issues with the applicant because he had a project being proposed next door to where I live. Those issues have been resolved. I'm not going to recuse myself in this case.
Okay. Were you able to go back and watch the video of this?
I watched it that day from the hallway.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. All right. Great. We're happy to have you participate.
Thank you.
Okay. If we have our applicant, we can get going. Okay, there he is. All right. Mr. Greer, welcome back. Please note the 15-minute timer there. If you could limit your presentation to that timeline, that'll be helpful for us. And
Great.
Take it away.
Thank you, Chair Moore and board members. It's been 9 months as we've assembled the planning application. It's been quite a while, so I'd like to start with your approval, just very quickly looking at the photo exhibit and just sort of reestablishing the neighborhood context. Where you can see the pin on the existing duplex for the site and the vacant let's say, parcel and area behind that existing duplex where we're proposing the new 4-unit structure. The site is on San Pascual between Pedregosa and Islay. The neighborhood is certainly mixed in character, and we can go to the next slide, please. I'll start with, I have some site photos, I suppose. You're seeing on the left the street, the existing street frontage and the existing driveway that will be utilized with the new plan. On the right, you're seeing the vacant area to be developed. Next slide, please. And in these photos, you're seeing some of the adjacent development from the vacant portion of the parcel. Thank you. Next slide. Very quickly showing existing multi-unit residential and the site in black within the neighborhood. Next slide, please. And then here we're seeing the existing 2-story structures. Certainly a mixed character in the neighborhood. Next slide, please. Next slide. We can just flip through the slides, show sort of the mixed character of the neighborhood, and you can just take 2 seconds a slide. Great, thank you very much. So what I appreciated about the neighborhood were some of the more eclectic sort of cottagey designs that we saw some photos of. And so I'll allude to that as we move through the presentation. So if we can start with the site plan, please. There have been really no significant changes to the site. This is the existing site plan you see from the street, the existing driveway to be utilized in the new plan. And if we can go to the new site plan, please. While there have been no really significant changes to the site plan, I will outline a few. One, starting from the street as we drive in the shared driveway. On the right, we have a new trash enclosure, a relocated trash enclosure I could see with bike lockers behind. And the reason that was relocated there was that was an area that could be more easily screened. And also that enabled us to locate the enclosures against an existing blank wall for the existing unit. And then as we continue into the site, we're also calling out a differentiated path of travel on the driveway. There's sort of a stippled hatch there. Yes, thank you. And then as we move further into the site, we've expanded some of the planter that we have in front of the middle of the structure. And so that differentiated path of travel is sort of co-located on the driveway to carry you back to the rearmost units there. The building, the new 4-unit building, was shifted about 14 inches to plan east here to the right to provide an extra foot plus space between the 2 units. And the open yard layout was revised. And so now each of those open yards at the rear of the new structure has a direct connection to the property line. And I'll talk more about privacy improvements there as well later. Thank you. I will show a landscape plan as well once we get through the architectural updates. If we can move to the floor plan, please. There really have been no significant updates to the floor plans, although on the first floor plan, if we can zoom in, on Plan West, you can see a bump out at the entry to Unit C at the front door. That's an addition to just better define the entry to that unit. And then, thank you, zooming out, there really have been no major updates to the plans. However, in the roof plan, if we could take a look at that, please. Plan Southwest, there was a hip roof that's been replaced with this gable roof that you see on the bottom left there. And I'll show that, of course, in elevations. Okay, next sheet, please. I've added this site exhibit just to provide more context for the project and also to sort of evaluate its proximity to the freeway. There's a substantial strip of undeveloped area, but the new structure ends up, I believe, just approximately 250 feet or so from the travel lanes of the freeway. So that is something we were considering. And then also at the request of the board, I added the other 2 site sections. If we can zoom in on those. providing section, I'll start at the bottom with section 1. That's showing the relationship between the new structure on the right, the existing single-story duplexes on the left, and the street, of course, is on the left. And then to the right, there's an undeveloped area before you get to the freeway. Section 2, showing the similar thing, relationship between the existing and the new in a different location, cutting through the sort of courtyard in the middle of the new building. And then section 3, cut in the other direction, showing the relationship of the new structure to the existing multi-family, multi-story development to Plan South. Thank you. We can skip to the elevations. So there have been some minor revisions to the elevations based on your board's comments. If we can start with the north elevation, elevation 1. I mentioned a new gable roof, and that's what you see on the right here, where previously there was a hip, now we have a side-facing gable. Yes, thank you. We've also redesigned, there's quite an exaggerated bull nose sort of shown in the original drawings at the doors and windows. And that is, the doors and windows are still proposed to be recessed, but it is a sharper angle there without the bull nose. We've also simplified a few things, one of those being the removal of the trellises on the second-story decks. We had one shown previously, and now we're proposing to remove those. Previously, the eaves were all a fluted stucco, let's say in 9-inch, 8-inch deep fluted stucco. And at the suggestion of at least one of the board members, we've redesigned that to be a built-up wood fascia that I have a detail for if you'd like to reference it, but it's essentially a 1x stucco key with a 2x8 on top of it, and then a 2x6 on the outermost edge of the built-up fascia. I believe those are most of the major changes on this elevation. Thank you. I should say the windows in general are factory finished bronze vinyl, and they are recessed as we're proposing them. If we can look to the south elevation, please. No major changes here, although some of these second-story windows have been somewhat reduced in size, just to address some privacy concerns at the private open yards. Moving up to the east elevation, please. Really no significant change to this elevation that I haven't already mentioned, other than the deletion of the trellis that we had shown previously on the deck. Thank you. We can look at the final elevation. Okay, in this elevation, you can see at the entry where I've simply pulled to better define that entry, provided some just I think it's an 8-inch or 9-inch bump out there at the entry. If we can look at the light fixtures quickly, please. We have sconces generally located, say, at the sides of the garage doors, and that's what you see at the top. And then another sconce, a sort of downward facing sconce at the bottom, with the idea that that could be located underneath the gable roofs that define the side entries to the units. Thank you. If we can zoom in on the finish specifications to the left. Here we have a Sherwin-Williams color palette. Little change from the previous proposal. The stucco finish is proposed as a troweled knockdown finish. I mentioned the windows, doors, and I think that's it for the finish specifications. Thank you. Next sheet, please. You know, on the details, I'll let your board generally, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, but let's look very quickly at detail 5 on this sheet. That's the proposed detail for the recessed, typical at the recessed windows. Thank you. We can go to the next sheet. And here we have a number of sort of trellis and gable entry cover details. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have, but let's just zoom in on detail 7, which shows the proposed built-up eave. You can see here I was referencing a 1x blocking is a stucco key with a 2x8 and then a 2x6 atop that, all painted per the color palette. Thank you very much. Let's look at the landscape plan. I'll present the landscape plan as best I can. Latin names and sizes, of course, are in the legend there. I'll start at the street, where we have generally sort of throughout a durable street cover proposed, or ground cover, excuse me. We do have a DG pathway proposed at the front of the existing unit. And then we have a number of sages and shrubs in front of the existing unit. Now, one of the comments from your board was to add a street tree where we are deleting an existing curb cut. And that is missing from this plan. And we are working with the street tree committee on that. And then also for our proposed replacement of an existing purple plum. It's not in great shape. That's adjacent to the driveway entrance where we're showing a New Zealand Christmas tree, a new New Zealand Christmas tree. Okay, and you can also see the use of shrubs and the trees to sort of help screen the proposed trash enclosure and bike lockers. As we move up the driveway into the site, we're proposing 3 new, hopefully 4 new canopy trees, either jacaranda or Chinese fringe, and retaining some of the existing plants as well in front of Unit B there in the existing duplex. So now focusing in on the new building, again, sort of the idea of durable ground cover in the foregrounds, and then building up with shrubs to create more of a sort of layered landscape as much as possible. And then we have 2 ornamental, I'm sorry, Hong Kong orchids at the front center. And then moving around to the back of the site, where we have the private open yards as they've been redesigned. The intention here was to provide usable paved areas, each of which includes a tree, and then also a variety of shrubs. We're proposing there at the center 2 evergreen pears, and then 2 fruit trees along the property line there. Lastly, 3 sweet shade trees at sort of the rear corners of the building as well. So overall, the big idea with the landscape was to provide a durable and maintainable landscape for rentals, but also to bring in as many trees really as we could. Okay, so that's the end of my presentation. I'm also happy to specifically address each of the comments from your board.
Okay, thank you. With that, we will open public comment. If there's any member of the public out there that would like to address the board about this project, you may follow the instructions on screen.
Thank you, Chair Moore and board members. At this time, I don't see any members of the public have logged into the webinar to speak on this item. Mary, have we received any written public correspondence?
Thank you, Christina, and board members. We have not received written correspondence for this item. Back to you.
Okay, thank you. And we will close public comment and go to questions from the board. Who has questions? Vice Chair 6, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Chair Moore. I noticed on your detail 5, your window surrounds, that you have a sharp stucco corner bead, both header and jamb. Do you have these sharp corner beads at all corners of the stucco on the outside corners of the building? Or are they just bull-nosed?
Sure, 6. The intention now is that, yes, there would be the sharp corners at each of the corners.
Of the outside?
Corner bead. Right.
Okay. Right. And then you mentioned that the exterior patios and fence, I assume, fence configurations of the outdoor yards on the south of the building were revised. Can you go through that, how they were revised?
Yes, Vice Chair 6. Thank you for asking. Previously, if we can look at the the landscape plan may be clearest for this, please. And we can zoom in on the private open yards. The previous, I'm sorry, let's look at the site plan private open yards, maybe more immediately sort of legible. The previous layout essentially had the private open yards for the two middle units were landlocked. They did not have access to the property line. There was just that whole hatched area there was just evenly divided into 4 rectangles. The benefit of and it's in response to some comments from the board that we study that, the benefit in my mind to this layout is A, that it provides each unit with access to the light and air at the property line, but also that this enables us to limit the exposure that each open yard has to the units, meaning essentially each ground floor unit can have multiple windows that open into their own private yard. And then on the second, and I should say also that each unit is provided with substantially more private open yard that is actually required. In each case where there's a dark hatch showing the 14 by 10 minimum required. And as you can see, once you factor in the sort of around the corner spaces for each private open yard, it's substantially larger. And then additionally, there were some concerns from the board that on the second floor, some of the second floor windows created privacy concerns for those open yards. With the previous layout, there was more overlap between second floor windows and another unit's private open yard. Whereas in this case, most of the second floor windows look down directly on their own private open yard.
Okay. This kind of rolls into a comment, but I noticed that the, what are they called? The heat pumps for the dog-legged open yards, could not those be moved to behind the kitchen door? So it's, you know, behind the door and out of the way, and rather than right in the bend and most usable part of the yard?
They certainly could.
Uh-huh, okay. I think those are my comments. Those are my questions.
Okay, thank you. Anybody
I
else?
have-
Questions?
I have some questions.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Olson.
Could we go back to the very first picture, which was the overhead view of the site and the neighborhood, or the neighbor to the, I guess, north? The photo. Okay, and then could it go to this, let's see. Could we go to the site plan? And so this is a shared driveway, is that correct?
That is correct. One of the board comments was that we confirm the easement permits us to use it as proposed, and we have done so, yes.
Okay, that was part of the question. That's really, that's all my questions.
Okay. Mr. Whalen, is that a hand?
Yes. One question, please. It appears that the balconies on the second floor have gotten bigger while losing the trellis. Could you go into a bit more detail about what went on there and why?
Yes, and thank you for mentioning that. I think that each was slightly enlarged from the previous proposal, the deck, although I don't believe it was beyond 12 inches, perhaps, each deck. The reasoning was largely driven by constructability and waterproofing concerns. The board specifically voiced concern that that we not overpromise in terms of our details. There's been some concern in the past about coming back for final with details that didn't match up to what was shown at the conceptual level. So we really endeavored to work with the applicant to confirm that we were addressing each and any constructability concern that might impact what he would prefer we bring for final. And so it really was simply to ensure that what we're proposing is economically feasible and does not have the type of constructability concerns that were reason for concern to the owner.
Very good. Thank you, Chair Moore.
Okay. Anyone else? Oh, Vice Chair Six, go ahead.
I have one more question. On your section block diagrams of the adjacent neighborhood structures, some of those that are boxes, I assume, without gables, I assume those are to the top of the ridge?
Vice Chair Six, it's approximately correct. If we zoom out just so that we can see the site plan there, you can see where the sections are drawn. Long story short, the sections are drawn near the ridges,
but not quite
in general, but not quite directly on the ridge. Correct.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. If we could flip back to the elevations really quickly. Okay. Is there, I'm looking at the little entry elements. Is there a driver for their particular width or proportions or anything?
I would say there were a couple concerns to get the entry elements to work. I really wanted to pull them out from the building so they had a certain presence, but it does, their dimensions are somewhat constrained because as they get wider, it encroaches on our the minimum dimensions we need to satisfy open yard for one. The other concern, I'd say, or consideration in terms of their vertical proportion was just trying to mate them well with the roof above so that they're, just in terms of where their eaves land against the wall.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then the wood elements on the south elevation that are, I guess, they're sort of shade elements over those, are they sliders or the French doors?
Oh, those are sliding doors.
Sliders.
Yes.
How far are those projecting out?
If we can go to the details, please. I have a detail for that on A92, detail 20, although it looks like it didn't provide an overall dimension, approximately 24, maybe 28 inches.
Okay. Is there room to give a little bit more generous depth on that? Just get a little more shade on the south facing glass?
There is, yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Perhaps I spoke too quickly, Chair Moore. Let me just take a look at make sure we're not running into overhang considerations. No, I think, yes, there is room to make those a bit deeper.
Okay. If we go back to the elevation, south elevation, these. So that kind of occurs over the kind of patio door for those two units. And then, so for units that are inboard, they have just a single door and then out onto their own little patio. Is that right?
And I'm sorry, when are you referencing the left and right most units when you say the inboard units, or the center units?
The center.
Yeah, so the center units each have a bathroom window, a door, a glazed door, and then a kitchen window at the sink onto their private open yard.
And then there's no window on the, I guess, the flanking wall, the walls that are projecting out towards us.
If we can go to the floor plan, I'll answer your question quickly. The first floor plan, please. And zoom in on those private open yards. So you can see that, say on the right here, where we have unit F, they do have a window, but only opening onto their private open yard.
All right. Okay, those are my questions. Any other follow-up questions before we move to comments? No? Okay, let's go to comments.
I have some comments.
Great. Go ahead.
The simplicity of this design, I think, is very effective. And it doesn't have a lot of unnecessary details, yet it's pleasing to the eye, as it appears in these drawings, at least. I think the color selection is excellent, and I think it's ready to go forward. Those are all my comments.
Okay, great. Anyone else? Comments? Mr. Whalen?
Yes, thank you. In the, a couple of things regarding the previous proposals. First of all, the windows were multi-paned and now they've gone to, well, less panes. I thought it was much more successful with multi-paned windows. And then I must have missed something in the conversation, but I feel the loss of the soft, rounded, bullnose plasters at the windows and the fluted stucco. I thought those were really charming elements that added a lot to the individuality of the design, and I'm sorry to see them go. And I would also like to see the design study a little bit more this trash and bike enclosure. It doesn't look completely resolved to me. And finally, the DG path on the street side doesn't seem to go anywhere. Perhaps I'm missing something, but nevertheless, that's a very small comment. Thank you very much, Chair Moore.
Okay, who's next? Ms. Anderson?
Oh yes, I was able to watch the video from August, and I agree with Mr. Whalen. I feel like the windows don't show as much detail as the garage doors, and I feel like there's just a miscommunication between the two. Yeah, and I'm not a huge fan of the color palette, but if everyone else is on board for that, then I will get on board.
Oops, excuse me.
Okay. Any other comments? Vice Chair Six.
Yeah, I resonate with the comments regarding the cut-ups in the windows. I'm okay with the colors. And I'm okay with the wood trim versus the fluted molding. I would suggest that I think it would be much better if this middle unit had a pitched gabled ends on the front and back rather than this than the hip roof. It's just an opinion, and it could be explored. But I don't mind the similarity between on the south elevations between the far right-hand gable and the smaller and setback would be a center and setback gable. I think then all your roofs would be much more harmonious. I think Chair Moore was alluding to the shade elements over the Arcadia doors. That dates me. The sliding doors and as depth as well. You could probably nestle those a little bit down further to accommodate more shade. I think the revisions to the outdoor yards is successful with that minor idea of tucking the inboard yards heat pump in a different place. I align with the idea that the trash structure needs to be more developed. And those are my comments. But overall, I think it's a successful project and fits in with the neighborhood successfully.
Okay, thank you. Well, my comments are that this is on the north elevation. There's just, if you look around the neighborhood, the houses are fairly simple and massing is fairly simple, and even the unit up front is pretty simple. So it doesn't, to my eye at least, it seems like this elevation is trying to do too much almost. I appreciate it, and it's normally we do want people to break up the massing and try and fool the eye into it's a collection of smaller buildings. But I think in this case there's so much going on that there's a lot of competition and busyness. And as my questions were alluding to, the entry elements proportionally feel a little compressed. Maybe it's just trying to get the door and the window in there on the same elevation. But they just seem really just out of proportion to me. And then the generous windows are great, but they seem almost out of scale for the structure. And then if we go to the south elevation, the arrangement of all the parts is just slightly off in a lot of cases. For instance, the sliders are clearly being driven by the interior flow, which is understandable, but then on the exterior, they just don't seem to quite feel in the right place relative to the openings around it. The head heights are kind of jumping all over the place, so I don't know if that's a fact that it was more of a hand generated elevation, but it feels like it needs to get sort of brought together a little bit more. So but overall, I think it's still a nice project. It's definitely fulfilling a need for housing, and it's commendable design in that regard. So I feel like it just needs a little bit more finessing to get it to the point where it's ready to go forwards. Okay, is there any other comments? Anybody have a strong feeling about a motion to put forward?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Chair Moore, you feel like it's not ready for design approval because of the elevations?
I feel like we would want to have, well, in my opinion, I feel like the elevations need further study and refinement. And I feel like we would, as a board, we want to have those elements set so we're not looking at large changes or even medium scale changes between a PDA and a final review.
I see.
So
Okay.
I may be in the minority in that. So where are other board members at?
Mr. Chair, unless, well, Chair Moore, unless I don't see the refinements or the problems that you're having, unless you could define them more. I think this is ready for preliminary.
Then you could make that motion.
Okay, so I will make a motion for indefinite continuance back to the full board for final. I'll make a motion for project design approval with the following comments: that the architecture and building mass is, can you go back to the elevations first? I'd like to generate my thoughts. Okay, thank you. That the overall character and mass bulky scale of the project is appropriate for the neighborhood and its site. That the rear exterior living patios have been successfully configured. That the project's design should be refined in the following, in some of the following ways: is that the windows should include more mullions and cut-ups of a distinctive arrangement. Can you slip down to the next elevation? That the unit openings with its king post gables should be restudied, perhaps to reduce the window and only provide a door, or some other way to make them more generous. I'll leave it with that. I can't think of that the board looks forward to development of the trash enclosure. It is located in an important part of the project. The board looks forward to pinning down the street tree situation. I can't think of anything else. People help me here. So that would be my motion, and I'm very willing to hear other comments that I've missed or should be included.
I think you have to read the compatibility.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. So, number one, as far as the board is aware that the project meets all city charter and municipal codes that and is also consistent with the guidelines for the location. Number two, it has a compatibility with the architectural character of the city and neighborhood as it's choosing some of its key elements such as windows and eaves and so forth from the surrounding neighborhood. Number three, the project is appropriate size, mass, scope, and scale as it's positioned in the back of the lot, first in the one-story unit occupies the street frontage, and there are a number of similar two-story sized buildings in the neighborhood and in adjacent locations. Number four, that as far as the board is aware, there is no adjacent landmarks or historical sources that would be affected. Number five, as there will be no views of mountains or oceans, public views that will be affected. And number six, there is adequate open space and landscaping generated by.
I second the motion.
Okay, any discussion? No? Okay. Then let's take our vote.
I'd like to have the motion read, please.
All right, thank you. I can go ahead and read it back. So motion is for project design approval and continue indefinitely back to the full board with the following comments. Number one, the overall character, mass, bulk, and scale is appropriate for the neighborhood and site. Number two, the rear exterior living patios have been successfully configured. Number three, the project's design shall be refined in the following ways. Number one, the windows should include more mullions and cut-ups of distinctive arrangements. Number two, the unit openings with gables shall be studied to reduce the windows and only provide a door. Number three, the board looks forward to development of trash enclosure, which is located in an important part of the project. And lastly, the board looks forward to a solution to the street tree situation. And the project compatibility analysis criteria were made.
Mary?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Mr. Olson.
Yes. So, Richard, I'm unclear about the comment about reducing the size of the windows. Would you repeat what you intended there on there?
I think, Mary, I don't remember what comment it was. It was that the gable ends on the entries and the arrangement of the doors. I just simplify that and say, restudy the composition of the entry elements to provide a more generous feeling. Does that make more sense, Mr. Olson?
Well, it does. So now, would you read that section of it over again, Mary? That formally included mentioning the size of the windows?
Sure. So the project's design shall be refined in the following ways. Number one, the windows should include more mullions and cut-ups of the distinctive arrangements. And number two, restudy the composition of entry elements in order to provide a more generous feeling.
Yes. That's more satisfying to me, Mr. Six.
Okay.
All right. We're happy with it. We can take our vote.
All right, thank you. I'll start with Chair Moore.
I'll get on board. Yes.
Right, thank you. Vice Chair Six.
Yes.
Board Member Anderson.
Yes.
Board Member Black.
Yes.
Board Member Olson.
Yes.
And Board Member Whalen.
And the caboose is on board, yes.
All right, thank you. The motion carries.
All right. Thank you. We can move on to item number 3. Oh,
Right on
and there's
time.
a 10-day appeal process. You can follow the instructions on the screen to do so. All right. Item number 3. Just 402 South Hope Avenue. This is a pre-application review, one-time consultation for a proposal to construct a 1,708 square foot electric vehicle and battery maintenance building between 2 existing showrooms and an existing auto dealership. The project includes demolishing and relocating a trash enclosure, 4 new parking spaces, and 2 bicycle parking spaces. The proposal will need development plan approval for the increase in non-residential square footage. Comments only. Again, this is one-time pre-app consultation. No final appealable decision will be made at this hearing. Okay, it looks like we have our applicant with us. Welcome. As we get moving here, you note the 15-minute timer there. If you could keep your presentation to that level, that'd be helpful. And you can introduce yourself and take us through this.
Okay, I'm Mike Ramsey with Lasardi. I represent the Santa Barbara Auto Group. And this is a presentation for a 1,708 square foot electric vehicle and battery maintenance buildings where they'll do all the maintenance on all the electric vehicles. And it's just a different setup from the rest of the service areas. And also in constructing that in its proposed location in between the 2, I guess you would say the showroom buildings and the service, we would be relocating a trash enclosure over to the, I would say the top of the page right up near the back of the movie theater by where they drive into the service drive, we'll say at the top of the page. And they'll move that exact same trash enclosure that they have now, exact same dimensions. It's basically a large roll-off that's inside there. They have all their trash is recycled and sorted and picked up there from the dealership. And if we go to the, I guess would be the next page, the floor plan. That's the site plan. You can see a little bit better. Where you'll enter is in between this is where the service drive at BMW and Audi. You enter in between there to get to that service building. It's in behind also a site wall, which I'll show you on the elevations. And then you can also see clearly where we've proposed the trash enclosure up near the top of the page. And if we go to the, I guess it would be the last page. There is the elevation and the location. That's looking at the front of the building You can see the rendering. It's just going to try to minimize the way it looks, keeping it so it has the same architectural details as the rest of the building. But it is just the maintenance building, and that's where it's going to be, back in that maintenance yard area. And I really think, I mean, that's, I have to show you there. Now this is also a part, once it goes to City Council, also I brought up to in front of the Architectural Review Committee, an expansion for the Porsche area. So this would all take place at the same time. But it still has to go to get the square footage approved through council. And that's it.
Okay. And can you remind us roughly where that the other expansion was going to take place? Just so
if you're looking at if you go, it's going to go right. If you're looking at where it says existing Porsche showroom, it came out right to where that circular parking is there, and it also had an entry portico, and it went back into this back area. And if you're looking at that one, the colored elevation, yes. So right there where, see that number 3, that's going to be where the entry portico is for Porsche. And then it would go, there's a small little gate that would end up becoming a larger gate that opens into the service area that's in that back portion there.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else to add?
No, that's it. I mean, you can actually, the elevations, we're just trying to keep them real simple and to also, also mimic a lot of the details that are on the building. So it was.
Okay. It's probably a good idea just to zoom in on one of the elevations and talk about the heights and materials of the doors.
Yeah, it's the same plaster finish. The doors are all the same colors as all the rest of the roll-up doors that are, and exterior doors that are in that courtyard area there for where service is. And you don't really see them. They kind of face in towards the buildings, the openings do, so you don't really see the doors from any of the openings at the streets or looking across the project. You mainly just see the walls of the structure.
Okay. All right. Well, if that's everything, we can move on.
It's pretty straightforward little maintenance building.
Okay. Well, with that, then we need to open public comment. If there's any members of the public would like to make a comment regarding this project, please, you can follow the instructions on the screen.
Thank you, Chair Moore. I do see several members of the public logged into the webinar. If you would like to speak on this item, please click on the raise your hand button and we'll give you 2 minutes to speak on this item. Mary, have we received any written public correspondence?
Thank you, Christina, and board members. We have not received written correspondence for this item. Back to you.
And I don't see that anybody has raised their hand. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Then we'll close public comment and go to questions from the board. Mr. Six, go ahead.
Why does this building have to be so high?
Because when the vehicle is on a lift, it's going to be up so you can walk underneath it. It's going to be at 16 feet or 8, clear on the inside. And so if you're working on it underneath it, if the hood's up on it, when it's up on the lift, the interior, there's a section through right there, the 18-foot clear. we might be able to reduce that some, but I think because of, the need for it to be high, and that's something we can look into, is to lowering it some.
No, I understand. You probably couldn't lower it more than a foot.
Yeah.
The question? Mr. Ramsey, that's a question. How much
Oh.
can you lower it?
I'd have to go back and look at it, but possibly a foot or maybe 2 feet. I just have to go back through and look at it. We could
Okay.
we could also bring the roof, flatter, so it really doesn't need a large parapet because there is nothing's up on top of that roof. So we could possibly bring it down some.
Okay, my second question is, when I review the existing architecture, I don't find these continuous columns running past the lintels up to a decorative pyramid. I find that the express columns, especially on, the existing entry opening and so forth, the column only goes up to the bottom of the lintel and has an expressed score joint, and then the lintel runs across the column, and no pyramidal. For instance, the entryway just to the right of the aqua canopies.
Mm-hmm.
I see that expression, but I don't see these pyramids or the continuous columns running all the way up to the parapet. Is there an example of that somewhere?
I believe it's on the other side, but if you would like to change it so it's that it actually looks more towards the ones to the left at the Audi building, to the right side of that, we have no problem doing that.
Okay. And then I guess, is there any wiggle room to get more? Oh, well, the question would be, if it seems to me with this architecture, the corner column, you have to step back once for the lintel, and then again for the wall plane in between the lintel. You see the 2 steps there at the column?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It would seem to me, the question would be, what are the dimensions of those?
We can go back to the floor plan. Let's see. Approximately 3 feet wide.
No. The recess, the return.
Oh, the return goes back. Yeah, about 6 inches.
Okay. Thank you. Those are my questions.
Okay, anyone else? Ms. Anderson?
Is there any mechanical equipment required for this building?
No.
Okay. That was my only question. Actually, that's not true. I have one more question. I noticed on one of the plans you had circles with numbers in yellow that I think were photos. Do you have those photos available to show us?
Right there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Could you walk us through a few of these?
That is the front entry of the Porsche, which has been seen, that it's going to have a an added portico and some added square footage to it. So that's going to be the entry area, which you see at the portion of the bottom, going back into that maintenance facility area. And then that's wrapping around towards the front of Mercedes. Up Hope Avenue, that's the looking off of Hope. Same right there, that's off of Hope Avenue. And sorry about the delays, and that is the service drive for off of Hope, going back into where they take all the cars in for service. And that's also the front of the lower picture. Image 10 is at the right at the entry for Mercedes, right at the top of Hope, the driveway off of Hope Avenue. And this is off of Hitchcock. And that's also, the top picture is looking back into where the backside of the service drive, where you would see on the right-hand side is about where that white column is coming down, is approximately where the relocation of the trash enclosure would be. Is there something specific that you're looking for, Lauren, or is this?
Yeah, I guess I was just trying to see if you could see it from.
I think go to the next picture. From Hitchcock, you might be able to see a white wall looking through that service drive way back into there. But it's not right up in your face or right next to the street.
Okay. Those are my questions.
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Can we find the drawings that give us some indication as to the height of this proposed building as it relates to the buildings in close proximity to it within this complex?
This one here shows that at, say, the top of the parapet at 22 feet. The building next to it is on the right-hand side is a 2-story building, which is taken up. You see a lot of roof to it, and the same with the other side is another 2-story building, which would be over the 22 feet. The reason why it looks low in that one elevation, if you move it over, that there's a parking deck back in, in the back there where it says, yeah, existing parking deck service building. That's just it's about in the same height as that, but the buildings themselves are definitely up above.
Yeah. Okay, that's all my questions. I have comments, but that's all my questions.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? No? Okay, let's go to comments, please.
So I'm ready with my comments.
Go ahead.
Oh, I think height matters here. And when I think about the interior dimensions, so I kind of think, well, maybe a car is 6 feet tall and most aren't. And so raise it another 6 feet, that's 12 feet, then a couple of feet in between, it's 14. And then it seems like when you are studying the potential for lowering the building, I'm hoping that you won't use this 1 or 2 foot as something that might make me happy if you come across ways to reduce the height of it. It would seem to me like there's more ability to lower the building a little bit more. And my second comment is that I've been here recently a couple of times. The lease on my car is expiring, so I'm getting ready to make a new lease. And it's hard to get around in this site. It's hard to find a parking place. Once I get out of my car, I have a hard time figuring out where I'm supposed to go. And I think that when this was built, originally built, it seemed to have a simplicity to it that it had some elegance in it. It seems over the years that that's gone away. I don't think that my comment here has something necessarily about this particular edition, but I do feel like the project is crowded and getting more crowded. That's all my comments.
Okay, who's next? Go ahead, Vice Chair Six. I think you're muted still.
As I alluded in my questions, I think that it should make every effort to lower the building as much as possible. And I think that I think that as far as the mean elevation that this building relates to, there's none of these pyramid expressions, and I think that it should match and look like the colonnade or porch to the whatever entry is to the left of the aqua canopy. And given that, to find the most significant recess between the corner column and lintel above and the wall plane in between those as much as possible. Those are my comments.
Okay. Anyone else? Mr. Whalen?
Thank you, Chair Moore. I think it would be useful for the benefit of our review is to have a view such as this one, but at street level, so that we could really understand the perspective impact of the height of the building. That being said, I don't really have an objection to the height and mass as other board members profess. I think it might add some interest to this little village of buildings. I would agree, though, that there needs to be some more attention paid to using motifs that are already in place, such as the squared punched openings or even recesses. It might be nice for the applicant to consider some natural daylight coming into this work wall. And the pyramids don't really bother me, but they are a point of interest, and in the effort to combine them with the existing architecture, perhaps they are metal that are painted a similar material to the tile roofs. Thank you, Chair Moore.
Okay. Anyone else? Anything to add? I mean, in my view, it's if the building gets a little smaller and is a little bit more subservient with the details relative to its neighbors, it will largely sort of fade into the background in this scenario. So that's what I would encourage the designers to attempt to do. Okay. This is a question for staff. Do we need kind of a summarizing motion, or all the board comments just taken in list form at this point?
Thank you, Chair Moore. At this point, we would need a motion like summarizing the comments so that the applicant can take their direction from those comments.
Okay. I guess, well, the motion, this is a question for staff again, since it's not an approval or anything like that. What would the motion be for? Just with the continuance?
Just comments. So, thank you, Chair Moore. The motion would be just for comments. I guess in front of it, you could put continued indefinitely with these comments.
Okay. So here's what I'll say. I'll make a motion for indefinite continuance in the following comments. And what I'm going to do is just list my comments, and then if board members want to chime in with their own comments in list form, I think that would be the fastest way to do this. So my comments are that the proposed architecture needs to be minimized in height and in detail, and that any detail provided needs to be similar to the surrounding buildings, and that the designers should attempt to minimize the appearance of this addition in general, and that if all those things are achieved, that the building could be supportable, or the design could be supportable in my mind. Vice Chair Six?
I'll second that.
Okay. You want to add your comments?
No, I think that's good enough. I think that's an excellent. I was excited about, the idea of, well, maybe not. I don't know whether the goal of having it go away would be hindered by punching some daylight windows. It's kind of nice. I think it'd be kind of nice to have that, but I'm kind of wishy-washy on it because maybe it should just go away and not bring attention to itself by adding windows or similar punches as the entry to the left, to the right. So I'm just gonna be very happy with your motion.
Okay. Is there any other discussion? Any more additions to that? I don't know what sort of landscape elements could also be provided if there's an opportunity to screen it in any other way, or vines or whatever, but something to consider.
Mr. Chair, if I had any question, I was curious as to what is on the ground plane around this building and whether or not it interfaces with pedestrians or users at all, and whether there are any improvements that could be proposed as a result of that, but I can't tell what's back there. So I don't know if the applicant, and maybe this is not the right time, but
yeah, I think they can come back. It's mostly, I don't think it's a customer area, it's storage, and it looks like there are some trees back there already.
Yeah.
Behind the blue little awning piece there. But so those I think would be important to include in any design as well. So let me amend the motion to include the comment that any existing trees and landscape should be in that area should be maintained and enhanced to the greatest extent possible.
Mr. Chair, as seconder, could we say, and if possible, encourage new planting areas?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Jason?
I would agree.
Okay. If there's nothing else, we can take a vote.
All right, thank you, board members. I'll go ahead and start with Chair Moore.
Yes.
Vice Chair Six.
Yes.
Board Member Anderson.
Yes.
Board Member Black.
Yes.
Board Member Olson.
Yes.
And Board Member Wayland.
Yes.
All right, the motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I believe that's it. So we can conclude our architectural board review agenda for May 12th. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a good evening.